Hello there, Florida Man 40k listeners. My name is Jimmy Prescott, back with you again with another hit episode. With me today, I have Mr. John Lennon.
What's up?
The wonderful Tim Pinney.
What up, what up?
And the one and only Dan Smith.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah, today we're going to have a more laid-back, coffee and 40k episode. We have lots of things to talk about. Several of us have recently attended events. We also have some changes and, opinions of recent codexes or lists that we've seen. So what would you guys like to dive into first?
All right, well, let's just kind of start off with me. I'm probably going first here because it is a busy life playing 40k with the Art of War. For anyone who's curious, we have the Streamhouse RTT running on the Art of War YouTube channel right now. So a bit of a shameless plug about my day job. But go check that out on our YouTube channel. And I'm actually going to be playing in the finals of that later today, which by the time this is live, I will either have endured shameful defeat or achieved glorious victory over the Drukhari. We'll find out, but yeah. So for me, I have just been practicing like a madman, and I've been trying to figure out the Dark Eldar equation, which we're going to talk about. And I decided to take an RTT off, and I took my pure Imperial Knight army to an RTT. Honestly, I like Knights. I understand that they are flawed as a faction, and I went in with tempered expectations that were slightly optimistic. Unfortunately, my plans were ruined, but that's okay. I still was able to go to the RTT. And yeah, I ended up taking my 3 Megara 4 Warglaive list, House Crest, which I've really enjoyed playing a couple times. But quite frankly, I painted up a Knight army for Art of War because we didn't have one. And then it never really gets played. And I was like, you know what? I'm taking this darn thing to a tournament. I am playing the Knights. And there's a lot of power there. My first game, just a quick summary, I ended up playing against an Orc player that had quite a lot of vehicles. And I shot them. And that was actually the end of the conversation. Orc shooting into Knights is not efficient enough to kill Knights. And it definitely isn't efficient enough to step out there and then take a shot back from the Knights. So that's kind of what happened was, I took my first turn, got a couple angles, killed a couple small units, and then I took a nice big Orc shooting phase on the chin, didn't lose a Knight, counted as top tier, and gutted his firepower. And from there, it was stomping and flaming and cleaning up. That one went downhill pretty fast. Unfortunately, my plans were ruined by the one and only Mark Perry. I had hoped to just go play the little RTT by myself, and then Mark decided to join me, his chaotic ways, bringing his actual tournament list. So I played Mark round 2 because I overachieved a little bit and got 96 points round 1. And this was a much tougher game. You know how Mortarion just makes saves sometimes?
Yeah.
Right? We all know that. So I actually won the primary by 10 with Imperial Knights here. And unfortunately, I still lost because I took cut off the head, and then Mortarion did not die in the appropriate amount of time, which was very unfortunate. I actually didn't end up killing Mortarion until turn 4. There were a bunch of really weird swings in this game, but honestly, I think that's just kind of part of the nightlife, where you play an army without a ton of dice and without a ton of rerolls, and you just kind of pull the slot machine and see what you get. And there were a couple turns where I was really disappointed in my shooting, Mark played very cagey, and then on turn 3 he stepped out, and he did all of the buffs, and a Noise Marine unit picked up a Knight, which is actually average, there's no complaints about that. And then I was and this is after 2 turns of me shooting Mortarion, and those 2 turns of shooting Mortarion, first turn I did 5 damage, second turn I did 0 damage, because Morty just decided he wasn't in the mood to take damage, and that sucked. Then it's alright, well, this whole army just stepped out in the open, this is my turn to counterattack with, still have 6 models left here. And I did 0 damage to Mortarion for a second turn in a row, and I killed 2 Noise Marines. And then I charged a cultist unit that was screening everything, and left 2 of them alive, so they tied up Trader's back. And that really sucked. From that point on, I kind of got it back into swinging distance on turn 4 and 5 because I bottom turn, but I ended up losing that one by a singular point. A very lonely 57-58 when that we were painted. So it was a really close game. I'm honestly kind of happy that I was able to take the Knights and go, toe to toe with Mark's, his actual tournament list. That actually made me feel a lot better about where they're at as an army. They were really fun, honestly. My third game was unfortunately very, very brief. We hit a table that was perhaps a little bit light on obscuring terrain, and then my opponent, who's a Spatial player, decided that he didn't want to hide behind a wall, so he deployed his whole army on the line, and then I went first.
Oof.
Ooh.
And that very quickly went downhill for him, unfortunately. He kind of just took a gamble just to see if he could win the roll off, and then he didn't. And I just shot him off the board, and there wasn't much tactical value there. But Knights can get some really skewed games. That definitely happens. Honestly, I was just really happy with the damage output of the Megures most of the time. The one time it really mattered, unfortunately, they fell a little bit short, but I think that's just something you accept when you play Knights.
Yeah, not enough free rules.
You're going to get some variance, and you just need to wait and find out which turn is going to be the turn. It's just, it's one turn where it's like, all right, 8 lightning cannon shots with Tesla, 3 hits, and then I did that twice in one turn, and when I was like shooting at like the Noise Marines, and that cumulatively killed 2 models, and I was like, this is terrible. So that's just a fact of life. But that was about it for me. A couple of us have been getting ready to go to DACACon, which DACACon is a tournament coming up in Central Florida. That's going to be on April 24th. And I think Tim's not going to be there, but myself, Dan, Jimmy, and Will are all currently planning to be in attendance. That's right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. I figure we can launch into a little bit of a segment talking about DACACon and what we're all planning on bringing. Dan,
Yeah.
You want to kick this one off? Let us know what you were thinking for DACACon.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I was kind of in a funny position because Will has been painting my Death Guard, and he's doing like an awesome job. I absolutely love it, but I haven't had the army in hand to actually playtest with a whole bunch. So I was trying to get it back like right before lists were due, but just circumstantially I ended up getting it back after I had to submit my list. So I like basically theory crafted to try to optimize the list as much as I could, and then I took that to the RTT we went to yesterday, which we'll talk about some later. And honestly, like, I did way better than I expected. I should have been 3-0. I made a few mistakes, whatever. But like, I found out that there's a couple very small changes I would have loved to have made that I just didn't think about without playtesting. And so that's kind of got me like I found that out yesterday, but the lists were due a week ago, so it kind of put me in this like funny position of like, I had to submit the list before playtesting, and those tiny things can be the difference between a win and a loss. And so we'll see what I can do. My goal, honestly, for DACCON is just like try to get 4-1, maybe a top 4 placement. Like Lennon is going to be there with, I believe, Dark Eldar. So like I know I'm not going to win. I can try. Maybe Lennon rolls nothing but ones for the entire game if I happen to play him. But like
that is very negative, sir.
Sorry, and that's something I think we might talk about later, is how we feel about the Dark Eldar Codex after it's been out for a little while. But yeah, needless to say, y'all know my opinion on that now. I am very down on the state of the meta because Dark Eldar exists.
Yeah, but we can all hope that Lennon rolls all ones when we face him on top table.
I gotta get there first. That I don't know. Anyways, but I am excited. Like I said, I performed a lot better than I expected with the Death Guard. I was actually worried about the Necron matchup because Necrons can just tag me in my own deployment zone. I fought against Necrons 2 out of my 3 games and like beat one, put myself in a hole in the other one, and I almost climbed out, but my Demon Prince just crapped all over himself. So again, I'm bouncing back and forth between a topic we said we were going to talk about and the actual DACCON prep, but for me it was kind of tied together just circumstantially. So I'll pass it off to you, Jimmy, and then I'll kind of go more into my actual RTT when we get to that point. But I'll pass it off to you for the DACCON prep.
Yeah, so it does similarly tie in the same because I went to the RTT yesterday, the same that Dan went to. And for Dakikon, I'm going to be playing the Tyranids Dimacarian list, and that is also what I've got submitted for Dakikon. So I did play my Dakikon list yesterday, made sure that we went to that RTT, even though I'm in the middle of a house move and all that, just so I could get that practice with the same list I'll be playing, kind of get a feel for it and what kinds of matchups, things I have to focus on. So I've played the list a few times against Dan and just the armies that we have in the house. So it was a good chance to get out and try it against other things, make sure that I learned things about tempo and the resource management. Because what I've found is there are so many ways in that Tyranids list to use CP, whether it's from taking advantage of movement or double shooting infantry or making the Dimacarians fight twice or reroll wounds. All those little pieces, you can do all of them and blow it all in a turn, or you can really surgically choose when and where to use those. And that's really what I need to learn. One of the games that I lost yesterday by 1 point was because I didn't have enough CP to fight a Dimacarian twice at a pivotal moment. And there are several points in that game where I could have saved CP just for that to happen, and I would have won that game. So those are the types of lessons I need to learn before Dakikon using that list. So I'll probably need to get a few more practice games this week, like 1 or 2 throughout the week, and then I'll feel a lot more confident getting into that weekend.
All right, and I know that Will is not here right now, but I believe he is planning to play his Imperial Guard, and I'm sure will be joining us in the after episode to talk about how he did. Will's been very excited about Dark Eldar. I think he just couldn't quite get the army that he wanted painted up, so he's taken the guard out for one last hurrah, and then his plan is to go full Drukhari, which is unfortunate because you never go full Drukhari.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know too, just for Will, he has had some really good performances with Imperial Guard this season so far. Like I think he's sitting top 10 in the ITC for Imperial Guard right now. So getting this GT under his belt, trying to get as many points as he can and kind of solidify himself to have a good faction showing before switching to Dark Eldar, that's something I know was important to him. So it's not like, oh darn, I couldn't get my cheesy army together, like now I have to do this. I'm sure it's a little bit that, but a lot of it for Will too is having another good showing with Imperial Guard to kind of be able to close that chapter for the season, but feel good about it, and then pick up with the Drukhari and really try to grind out, see if he can't get some top table showings and some GT wins with an army he's passionate about. So I know I believe he's excited for the Guard, and then also obviously for the Dark Eldar.
Yeah, I mean, I think our last episode we talked about the Dark Eldar a little bit. They are pretty wild, and by a little bit I mean we had the Archon Scarion and talked about Dark Eldar for a long time. They are honestly crazy. I think that's all of our plans for Dakikon. I know that there's a lot of things like coming up in the future that we're really excited about. Tim is obviously extremely hyped for a new Sisters release.
Super excited.
We're all kind of assuming it's a codex because every time we record a new episode, it's like, oh yeah, they previewed a new plastic kit. Now it's those Celestians that have like shields and halberds, and honestly, those are like the coolest models I've ever seen in my life. So that's happening. I'm a Sisters player too now. I've obviously played Sisters before, but yeah, the second that codex hits, I'm going deep into the Sisters. I am playing Dark Eldar, as we mentioned, for Dakikon. I kind of did this out of, what I saw as necessity, which sucks. I would rather be playing something Imperial, but the new Dark Eldar Codex is extremely powerful, and unfortunately, it matches up very well into all of the armies that I own. And I didn't really want to just it was either pick up an entirely new army so that I have something with a decent matchup into Dark Eldar, or pick up a new Dark Eldar, and I just kind of went with that because short term I think that's going to be a little easier. I don't really intend to play Dark Eldar for a lot of the season, but I'm probably just going to take it to 2 or 3 events and paint up my Sisters collection and get that really nice and ready for what I assume is a new codex. But if GW decides to just paint supplement into a lot of new rules, Sisters have a great codex now, so I'll be happy with that.
Sweet. What do you, before we lose you here, John, I know you're busy with the Art of War Streamhouse RTT. What do you feel about, I know a lot of people, especially in the Chaos side, are excited about Belakor, and for everyone else, we're going to probably have to learn how to deal with them. What do you think about him? His rules so far look great. T7, -1 to be hit and wounded, 4 Invuln, no rerolls against him. I'm sure the sting of 4 Invulns is fresh in your minds. What do you think?
As long as he doesn't have damage reduction and a feel no pain, I think I can just kind of muscle my way through it. He looks really cool. At 16 wounds, he's the perfect profile. He flies. He looks like he's going to be really beefy in combat. Like I'm expecting Belakor to be super, super cool. It's all about that price tag, honestly, where we have no idea how much Belakor is going to cost. What's kind of weird is that they ended up putting They ended up like printing his Sigmar rules. So like they released like a PDF with like all of his Sigmar rules, like a couple pages. Like this is what he does, and then they gave like one like page of 40k rules that was literally just his stat line and no special rules. So the stat line looks, pretty great because that doesn't say he's -1 to hit, wounded on 4 pinball and all that. But we know from the preview articles that that's what's coming.
Exactly.
It's really gonna. I'm wondering. I figure Belakor is probably whatever the next campaign book is. I'm guessing Belakor gets involved there for 40k as well, so they have an excuse to print his data sheet somewhere. Either that or there's a Demon Codex coming a lot sooner than any of us expect. But he looks really interesting. It's all going to be about that points cost. If he's as durable as he sounds and a significant portion of the army, he'll be manageable the same way that Mortarion is. And we'll see.
Yeah. I'm also super excited about Belakor. I don't know if we want to dive super deep right now.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's jump in.
Dive right in, Dan.
Cool. So, with that being said, sorry, I need to pull up the. Sorry, Tim.
That preview article?
Yeah, I'm pulling up.
Yeah, I think he's -1 to hit all the time and -1 to wound against ranged attacks.
Yeah,
and then he has a 4 invulnerable save, and I don't think you can reroll against him, but I don't know if that's shooting only or if that's combat too.
I believe it's all the time.
All the time?
Yeah.
Pretty gnarly.
Okay, I found the article. Sorry, Tim.
No, it's alright. I got the rules right here. Let's see. Each time an attack is made against a model, your opponent cannot reroll the hit roll. Yeah. Each time an attack is made against this unit, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll.
Yeah.
This model has a 4 up invulnerable save. Each time a ranged attack is made against this model, subtract 1 from the attack's wound roll.
It's going to take some effort.
Yeah.
That is going to take some effort. Honestly, that's really cool. I really like that, honestly. It's just, how ignorable is he going to be? What kind of buffs is he going to do for the army? Is he just going to be a beat stick that's hard to kill? Like, that's so many special rules, I'm like, oh, they can't give him that much more. But if they give him any kind of, aura buff for demons, suddenly it becomes something you really have to deal with, not something that you charge 10 guardsmen into because he's only has so many attacks and you might have a couple guardsmen left and then you get to time up for a while.
Yeah, so the one thing I remember seeing was he's got the 2 profiles. He has the big attacks and the sweeping attacks, which I hope they continue to do for all monstrous creatures because it just makes sense. I know the Satan Nightbringer has it, Belakor has it, Mortarion. So if they do that, just for example, if they do that for Tyranids, like a Carnifex can get 2 attacks instead of 1 for some sweeping profile, stuff like that, it helps those big creatures not just get bogged down by 10 guardsmen. I know, Primaris Marines with Transhuman can still just bog you down, but hopefully, if we can get a situation where the monsters have the ability to get through chaff as well as large targets, then they feel a lot better to actually bring to the game because your opponent has to deal with them. They don't just throw 50 points of chaff and time up for 2 turns. So that's one thing I'm excited about. And of course, any opportunity to get another Psychic Tree in Chaos is just going to be strong. Even if it's mediocre powers, you're not taking him for the tree, you're taking him for everything else, and you happen to get this tree. So unless he's 500 points or more, I'm just excited about him. I think I'm definitely going to get a model, assuming I'm able to, because I know distribution's weird. But I'm definitely going to get him, and I will be playing him. Whether or not he makes it to a tournament list is going to all depend on his points. But he's already good enough to try, kind of regardless of what his points value is.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick. So I think that's going to be huge. Is pretty much going to be one where he's HQ or Lord of War. But even if he's Lord of War, if he gets Supreme Commander, we've seen some of these other big centerpiece models get. That's going to be okay. I think on a more of a meta level, I think what's really going to drive whether we see him or not is just who actually has him. It's not even about the price. He's going to be about the same price as a Greater Demon in actual real dollars. But a lot of stores only have like 1 or 2 allotments, and so if you don't get it, like you might not get it for like several months. But for me, the thing I'm interested in seeing is what psychic discipline will we have? Will it be Dark Hereticus, or will it be that special Dark Hereticus, or will it be something else? Or will he be able to dip into all 4 existing trees? Will they make a new tree? Because he's built. We're assuming with the 9th edition.
I think they've already said that he's getting his own tree.
Yeah, and so it's going to really depend on like what's in that tree, and a lot of stuff is we can tell that chaos is getting kind of redesigned, but we do know that no matter what, it's going to play like chaos. But I think how many casts and denies he has and what his spells have, I think that's going to be a real huge part of defining how we deal with him.
Yeah, and one thing, I believe we saw somewhere that he's 16 wounds, which leads me to believe he's going to be an HQ. Now, there's a chance he's still a Supreme Commander super heavy, but generally that 16 to 18 wound is the swing point. So, like, Mortarion's 18 wounds, obviously, he's Lord of War, but there's some of the greater demons are 14 or 16 wounds, and they're just HQs. So, I'm of the opinion that he will be an HQ slot, which also tells me I think he'll probably be closer in the 300 to 400 point range instead of the 400 to 500 point range. So those are kind of the things that I've picked up, which honestly, if that's true, will make him incredibly strong.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Insanely good. And the other thing, he is $140 American for retail, so that is the exact price of all the other greater demons, Mortarion and Magnus.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to fit him into that kind of like profile or whatever.
Yeah, and he even like his size comparisons and stuff. I guess the greater demons are about the same size as the Primarchs now, but he's right in that same size category, price range, like everything. So, like personally, I'm really hoping, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, that we can do the Super Chicken with Belakor and possibly with Mortarion. And then, like, Beast of Nurgle or something. Just one of those ridiculous, just like, here I am, super durable armies. To me, that sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, I love it. I've always kind of had, like, more of a soft spot for the demon side of Chaos more than... CSM don't really grab me, but, man, Chaos Demons I always thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've liked both forever. Like, the Helldrake came out and I was sold. But, like, so I got the Helldrake, and then the Helldrake kind of reminded me more of the demons, so I did end up playing mostly Chaos Demons for 3 editions now. And I used to have the old Finecast Belakor painted up real nice and played him some. Like, Bellacor's always been one of those just interesting characters and models to me, so I love that they're giving us, like, this rendition of Belakor.
Yeah, Belakor has been really cool at points in the past, so this new model is obviously going to be fantastic for him, especially since it's like 4 times the size. What's interesting is that with that wingspan, I know he's 16 wounds. He is going to be damn near impossible to hide with how big he is.
Yeah, it's going to be very terrain dependent, but yeah, it's unless you can turn him sideways, and even then he might. The issue I see with him is even on tables where maybe you can hide him, just his sheer size pushes out other models that maybe need to hide more, and forces you into a hard decision. Like, well, he's T7 -1 to hit, -1 to wound.
No one's rerolling anything.
No one's rerolling anything. I can obscure him? Do I? Victor's talking. Do I just put him behind? Do I just put him out in the open where he can take it and hide some of my more fragile stuff instead?
Yeah.
So that's honestly one of the things I love about him, though, is you have that option. Like, there might be a table where you're like, great, I gotta hide Belakor, he's never going to die, like, and I gotta hide the important stuff. And if you don't have that option, like, you just deploy him on the line and say, like, I kind of don't care, you shouldn't kill him. And if you dedicate what you need to dedicate into Belakor, you probably didn't put that into anything else. And it creates that scenario where you can really deploy aggressively if you need to, and just kind of rely on, like, well, he shouldn't die, and like it might happen, especially like small arms fire. I guess no rerolls to wounds make that tough, but like AdMech, high volume of strength 7, wounding him on 4s, all that crap. Like he can get chewed down. I'm not saying he's going to be immortal or anything, but it's the same philosophy of why the super chicken works right now. Is like you put so much into him, and if you kill him, like it's going to really suck as a chaos player, but there's a chance you don't. And then if you don't, the tempo swings so hard in the chaos player's favor that like it can just end games sometimes.
Yeah, T7 with -1 to hit, -1 to wound from range attacks, and no hit rerolls. Small arms fire is going to have a really hard time sticking. That's for most small arms fire. Even that's going to be like wounding on 6s and autocannons wounding on 5s. You know, I think even AdMech will struggle against that.
This is an anti-tank thing. You want those Cognus Las cannons, the battle cannons, the demolisher cannons. That's the kind of stuff that I'm putting in here. Although AdMech with pluses to hit and pluses to wound will also be awesome here. So anything that can do that is going to feel a lot better.
Or +1 to strength to kind of get you over that strength 7 to strength 8 break point, which counteract the -1 to be wounded.
Mm-hmm. Or Miracle Ice.
So I just want to go ahead and just get out ahead of just go ahead and put Fs in chat for all the Space Marine librarians that will give up their lives in the next year trying to get Null Zone off.
Oh my god, it's not. Oh no.
you know people are gonna try it.
I'm gonna try it too. I just know it's gonna happen. Full expectations of that librarian dying horribly. Watch, they're gonna give him a 6-inch intervention just to really mess you up.
Alright, so let's move on. I know we kind of touched briefly on other topics, but some of the stuff we want to talk about today was Sisters Predictions wish listing. I know some of us wanted to talk about Deathwatch again and revisit a little bit, and we kind of hinted at it before, but Dark Eldar, now we have a lot of games. It's kind of like an open table, round table. What else do you guys want to talk about?
Dark Eldar is why I'm here. I'm here to complain about Dark Eldar.
Go for it. Get in your soapbox.
I am all in on, by the way. Let's hear the complaints, because I've got some too.
Yeah, because I think they go deeper than just what the internet is saying.
So I think Dark Eldar are fundamentally just way better than everything else right now. You can build obscure hard counters that are weird and have questionable places in the meta as a whole, but Dark Eldar really push out. So what's weird here is that like we have a top contender that just has universally amazing matchups into the other like 5 top armies, and this is the weird part. Like we've had armies that dumpster the middle tables before. We've had armies that like, you know, were very strong, but like Dark Eldar is unique here in that the armies that I would have told you are top 5, Dark Eldar has a good matchup into all of them. And now with the new AdMech Codex, that may change, but we don't have that yet. And Dark Eldar, to me, feel oppressively strong. Their rules feel like there's 7 things in this book that I'm just like, why on earth is this here? And it goes deeper than just this unit doesn't cost enough. This unit has too many special rules. This stratagem is too good. It's on almost every level, if I'm being honest. And yes, I am complaining and being a negative here, but like to give some examples of things that we didn't really touch on before. And you know what? We haven't had a day on FAQ, so maybe GW will fix this for us. We've already talked about the suffix that never stopped rolling dice. That's stupid. We have not talked about the fact that Dark Eldar do not have the normal sub-faction restrictions on getting their bonuses. You can take a let's say you want to get your Dark Technomancer racks, because with liquid fire guns they're really good. You can take a Dark Technomancer patrol, and you can put a Blackheart Archon in that patrol without giving up your Dark Technomancer buffs. Like you're given 2 command points and told, go ahead, take multiple detachments. That thing everyone else pays a tax on, you get it for free and can use 2 command points on top. okay, I'm kind of fine with the 3 patrols because Dark Eldar is broken up into sub-factions in their codex. So I'm okay with the 3 patrols. I don't like that you can take your 3 patrols and you can soup in all 3 of them and still get your sub-faction bonuses for 1 faction in each patrol, and there's no penalty at all. It's like, okay, Dark Eldar, you get a piece of cake that no one else gets. All right, here's your cherry on top. Here's the silver platter that it's served on. And by the way, it's like, why do they get so much extra stuff that just mechanically other armies don't get? Their MSU is hellacious. Honestly, their units do too much in general. Like, I think they do too much for the points. I think they hit too hard. I think they're too cheap. I think they're too fast. Comparing raiders to other dedicated transports is basically a war crime. Like the Slith and Urgo party, which is something I'm literally painting right now because I have no self-esteem. Like comparing an Urgo to a pure Sin Gene Stealer makes me want to go play Star Wars Legion. No, Dan, I'm not gonna do it. But like, don't even bother. Like,
I literally
seriously,
unmuted. My clones are painted beautifully. With
yeah,
letters.
I know what's going. Like an Urgo is stat-wise a pure Strain Gene Stealer that's 1 point cheaper, so it's cheaper than a pure Strain Gene Stealer. For that 1 point cheaper, you gain 2 wounds, gain 2 attacks on the charge. You still advance in charge turn 1. You hit on 2s turn 1, where pure Strains hit on 3s. You get a 5-up Feel No Pain, and you have 1 worse invuln on turn 1 and 2. Turn 3, you have the same invuln. It's like why the hell am I paying more to be less attacks, 2 less wounds, not have a Feel No Pain, not hit on 2s? Like, what on earth is happening here? And you know, Slits, same problem. There's just a lot of different things that are just too good in the Dark Eldar book, and some armies can contend with them. No argument about that. But there are just some that I think it can't. And it's so weird for a new top tier army to so thoroughly dumpster other top tier armies. And I'm referring here to Space Marines. And yes, I do not expect pity for the Space Marines because Space Marines have been very good for a while. And that's okay. Space Marines do not need to be good forever. I do not think Space Marines need to always be the best army in the game. I'm not GW here. But it's just such a radical, like, yep, this is one of the top armies in the game, and now it's unplayable into Dark Eldar. And it's just, you know, this is not something that happened over time. And Space Marines are still good into everything else. It's just like, we come in, we dumpster the other several of the other top tier armies, and there's no clear obvious counter. Like, yes, AdMech have a playable game into Dark Eldar, but it's not an auto win at all. Like, what, there's like maybe 3 or 4 50% matchups for Dark Eldar, and everything else they just dumpster. And that's my soapbox.
Yeah, so to like just jump in a little bit, on a philosophical level, generally a competitive army has to function really well in 2 of the 4 phases. So they're either really good at movement, really good at psychic, really good at shooting, or really good at combat. You get 2 of the 4, and like you're going to be an A tier army. And of course durability comes into play as well. But Dark Eldar get 3. They have movement, they have shooting, and they have close combat. So it creates a scenario where you just get 1 more phase to do stuff than your opponents do, and you kind of don't care about the durability aspect because you have so many assets. In a game designed around skirmishing to like take objectives and kind of ebb and flow, like they have the most assets in a single list, and they can trade out 1 for 1. So if I have, like, the Death Guard list I'm playing, I could say I have 9 assets when we break it down. Like, I have a ton of assets. They're slow, but they're really good. Dark Eldar can remove basically every single asset 1-to-1 and still have, like, 4 or 5 really hard-hitting units left. And that's kind of the trick, is to be able to beat Dark Eldar, it feels like you have to be able to take out 3 or 4 of their assets for every 1 they take of yours. So yeah, I know, before I go too deep on my own soapbox, Lennon, did you have any parting words? I know you got to get rolling for the Art of War RTT stuff you got going on. So I'll step back, and if you got anything else you want to say, go for it real fast.
No, that was really my rant. I mean, I think Dark Eldar, you know, again, there's a lot of, wait and see how the meta adapts. But honestly, I've been building, at this point, I build my Space Marine lists specifically to kill Dark Eldar, and I don't think about anything else. and I still have not beaten Dark Eldar with Space Marines. Like I've given up on like pretending. I'm just trying to counter Dark Eldar, and it hasn't even worked yet. And like hard tailored Space Marines, which I would have considered one of the 2 best armies in the game, like cannot get within 20 points of Take All Comer Dark Eldar. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's a tough one. I recently played for the same Streamhouse RTT Dark Angels into Dark Eldar, and it was very demoralizing. Not in that nothing happened, but in that so much happened and it didn't matter. Where there was a point at the end of my turn 3 going into Nick's turn 3. So I had killed at this point in the game. So I had lost 3 attack bikes and 5 infiltrators. After 2 turns, that's all Nick had killed because he had played very defensively. At that same point in time, end of my turn 3, I had killed 4 raiders, 20 witches, 5 racks, 4 Cavalites, 8 Slith and Urgle, Drazar, and 8 incubi. And it's like I put so much work in. Nick I think Nick made some big mistakes, and he just actually let me shoot him for 3 turns in a row, and it didn't matter. I still lost by 24 points because Nick, he just had enough stuff left. He's like, all right, well, fine, I'm gonna go kill all of your talents and attack bikes now. I'm like, well, crap. And then that was it. I shot him 3 turns in a row with an army that I specifically built to be more firepower than your average Space Marine list, specifically good profiles into Dark Eldar, specifically hard to interact with for Dark Eldar. Like I was leaning into Dreadnoughts and Talonmasters and Volkites and long range stuff. Fast attack bikes with 4 Thin Wounds, those are pretty good into Dark Lances. And it just didn't matter. I just got eviscerated. And I was like, wow, okay, I can shoot you 3 turns in a row without taking any meaningful damage back, and then you hit me so hard that I lose by 24 points.
Yeah, it's like the Dark Eldar players just, at a certain point, they just decide, okay, I'm done playing the game, I just want to win it now. And then they just do.
And honestly, if Nick had decided that a turn earlier, it would have been much worse for me. He just kind of tried to play defensive because that's the playstyle Dark Eldar remembers. The Dark Eldar is an aggressive army. Like, you can play cagey with Dark Eldar, but honestly, all you're doing is letting your opponent hang in the game for 3 turns and then rushing them and ending it. If that's what you want to do, go ahead, but you could do the same thing on turn 1 and just end it.
That's pretty much exactly how my games have gone. I think my last game against Dark Eldar, it felt like I was tabling my opponent.
Yep.
And at the end of it, I still had most of my army, and he had, and granted, he's a little bit of a newer player, so he probably hung back a turn longer than he probably should have. But by the time, I was just all over the place, Repench everywhere, Mortifiers everywhere, Seraphim, putting in work. And then he had the Ooga Booga Homunculus on his backfield objective, and then he had 2 Raiders left, but inside those Raiders were like 2 units of Incubi, Drazar, Archon, Super Suck, and the Witches. And so, thankfully, and then he decided, disembark everything and charge everything in. And I think, thankfully, myself having to interrupt, being able to intervene with the Triumph of St. Catherine, and the 2 Mortifiers blowing up and killing like 9 Incubi between the 2 of them, because he piled in the second squad, and that's what killed the Mortifiers. But both Mortifiers were in range of both squads when they died, and they wiped out like 8 of the Incubi when they blew up. That kind of like swung it in there for me, and then I was able to get in there, clear out the Witches, the Super Suck, and then just shoot Drazar to death. But I mean, it was kind of like, holy crap, like if had that, and then I think that was like his second game with the army or something like that, and it was just the power was immediately apparent, and not only that, but just how much stuff they had. It was honestly quite insane, because he kept me busy for a while just playing the back and forth ping-ponging objective game, and then it was like you said, it was like, okay, well, now it's time to go in there and bring the thunder, and then the melee started happening. It was just absolutely bananas. The power was immediately apparent.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to just mention real fast, was the data we've gotten from their win percentage includes the inexperienced players that just picked up the army, or maybe they were casuals that had it and decided to take it. They're sitting, if I remember right, around a 78% win rate, not including mirror matches, obviously. and if I remember right, I think Iron Hands, when they got hot patched that weekend, were more of like a 65%. So it's like Iron Hands were good with some specific builds, some specific exploitations. Like, you just pick up the Dark Eldar Codex, start throwing some darts, get close to 2,000 points. Maybe you only have 1,850, doesn't matter. You just take that to a tournament, and you're going to win most of your games. And it doesn't matter really. Like, if you understand how to score points in 9th edition, which is like get on objectives sometimes, like, they just win. And almost like expecting 4-1 just because you signed up with Dark Eldar, like, to me, like, that's insane. And like you said, even there, Tim, you had explosions, you had all this stuff go right for you against a newer player with a newer army, and like you had to also have some die rolls go in your favor to be able to eke out that win. Like, it's just oppressive.
Yeah, and bottom line, like, I mean, a lot of people have been on the wait and see mentality. We're going to keep getting more data. So their win rate as of last weekend, we're recording this on Sunday the 18th. Last weekend, they had a 72% win rate and won quite a few events. I don't know what their win rate is this weekend yet. I'm sure that other people who do this will tell us sometime Monday or Tuesday. But I can tell you that since the Dark Eldar Codex came out, there have been 6 RTTs in the state of Florida. 5 of them were won by Dark Eldar, and the other one did not have a Dark Eldar player in attendance. And it's just like, so if Dark Eldar showed up to a tournament in Florida, they have won it, period. And you know what? Next weekend, I'm going to a tournament with Dark Eldar in Florida, so I'm going to try to keep the tradition strong and alive, and hopefully, I honestly kind of hope they get changed quickly, because right now it's, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. But also, like, the Dark Eldar list I've been working on, it's like, it fits so naturally into a play the mission playstyle, and is also aggressive, and is also tougher than you expect for the points. Like, Dark Eldar is more durable than average for their points. They're faster than average for their points. They hit harder than average for their points. They're cheaper. Like, they've got everything. They get more units. They're just better than whatever army you were playing. And you need to give you a very specific thing. Like, I think Grey Knights have the ability to trade upwards, and it's like Dan said, they have more stuff than you, period. And your stuff cannot go out 1-for-1. If you're going to lose a Grey Knight squad, you need to teleport someone, bump up its special weapons, and kill 2 or 3 Dark Eldar units. And you need to do that all game long without losing your units back. Chaos Nurgle actually can do it because Dark Eldar won't kill them as efficiently, and that's like the Beast of Nurgle list. But, you know, my choices here are Grey Knights, which I don't own a single model for, Beast of Nurgle, which I don't own a single Chaos model. But that's not true. I actually have 1 Bloodletter. I have 1 Bloodletter. I don't think that's enough. Like, you know, Emperor's Children, Noise Marines have the ability to pick multiple Dark Eldar units at once and get a positive trade. Admech has the potential to army-wide do enough damage and not take it back at the ranged game, but that's a potential, that's not a guarantee at all. Like, literally yesterday, you know, Dark Eldar just beat Admech in our Streamhouse RTT. So nothing's guaranteed there. But yeah, that's about it. Expect to see Dark Eldar soon. If you haven't played them yet, expect to.
And just to put a bow on this conversation, the reason why this is an important conversation is because when you have a breakdown in like competitive integrity, almost like the game gets so out of balance, then it demoralizes people and negatively impacts the competitive scene.
Yeah, what's specifically weird about it as well is, like, Dan and I would probably be each playing Dark Eldar if there was any supply of it. But now at this point, your basic troops are going for like 250% their real retail price on the secondary market because there's like no restock in sight. So while this thing is just swathing through, it's like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. We can't even join them. It becomes a really weird gambit whenever you're trying to play a competitive game, but you can't even get the tools you need to compete.
Yeah, I'd have to dig around for it. We can always pull it up in a different chat, or a different episode, although I'd hate to have to do like 3 episodes in Dark Eldar. But one of my friends, he works a lot with Falcon, and he has an excellent amount of data on Iron Hands. And it was the stats on all the people who had, you know, existing ITC records and had switched to Iron Hands when it was obvious that they were strong. And he basically had them broken down by their quartiles, the top 25% in generic performance, then 75%, 50%, 25%. Like, he had actually tracked their records. He found everyone who had not been playing Iron Hands, then switched to Iron Hands, and he basically looked, at their win percentages or time in winning position at previous events, and was able to put them into these chunks of like what percentile they were. And it was something that makes sense when you hear it, but basically the lower percentiles, the lower 25%, mid 25%, 75%, everything, the win rates were humongous when they switched to Iron Hands, like immediately humongous, like going from like winning 30% of their games to like 65% or more, and that win percent kind of tapered off as you got to the top 25%. With the top 25% of switchers to Iron Hands, the win rate jumped up by like a percentage or two. And I just kind of, he's in the middle of acquiring this data right now for Dark Eldar, and I'm definitely very interested to see what that is, because the theory is that they're fragile, so there's opportunity for misplay. What we're starting to hear come down from the grapevine from people who are getting in lots of games, lots of testing, is they're so cheap it doesn't matter. But Iron Hands was just brutalistic probability that was just thrown in your face. So it will definitely be interesting to see like where the breakdown is of how much do Dark Eldar elevate your win percentage and your time of winning position based on where you were when you switched.
Yeah, so I think a big thing for that is the 75%, I guess, like not the top quartile, but the very next one is usually where I think it shows up the most. Is you get those players who are consistently 3-2, 4-1, like that level of player who they understand the game, and then they get their hands on something with that much power. Like, I think that's where it really, like, obviously, like, it for the low end, like more casual gamers, you just, whoever has the most broken list usually wins those games. But then for me, because I consider myself in that like the third category, I'm not like top tier, top 25% necessarily, but I generally can sit like positive, doing decently at events. When I had Iron Hands, it was like I went to Crucible with Iron Hands with no practice and made it all the way to top table against Lenin. And I feel like if I was able to pick up Dark Eldar right now, it would be the exact same thing. Like, I don't really have a lot of practice right now. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. But you hand me an optimized Dark Eldar list, and I'm going to pretty much go win every game I'm supposed to until I run into the mirror match against a better player. Like, that's the power of this codex. It's for the low tables, it's just they're going to win because the army's so much better. And then the players who are like decently skilled but haven't quite gotten in stride, it's the army, it's like the get right army. Like, suddenly you're in that position where you get right and you can just go win basically against anyone who isn't a professional 40k player with either a counter build or the same build.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I was at an RTT this weekend, and it was actually they called it the DACACon qualifier at Strange Realms in Tampa, Florida. And, 3-round event on the 17th. And the first game I played on stream, actually. And from what I understand in chat, it was hosted by the Twitch channel that's run by Jim Vessel. And in that game, I fought against a guy named Matt who was playing Space Wolves. And it was the first time that I've fought against Redemptor Dreadnoughts. So that game, I did end up winning. It was something like 85 to 57 or somewhere in that amount. And that's, including paint scores and all that stuff. And there's not a lot to say about that game. I, in the beginning, tried to do a little bit of damage to the Redemptors. I didn't really know what they'd be pumping out since it was the first time that I'd gone against them, but he had put most of his Wolf Cavalry and things like that on the left side of the board, and his Redemptors were on the right side of the board, and this is a Dawn of War setup. So I, while taking objectives and also kind of focusing on the meat of the list, I threw Daimacarians towards the left side of the board away from the Redemptors, and then one Daimacarian just center of the field because he took raised banners, and he was starting to raise banners in those areas. So I was trying to mitigate those points as fast as I could. And what it basically ended up with is one Daimacarian to the back left of his deployment zone, fighting a bunch of infantry, and that did a lot of work. He heroically intervened with a character that made my Diamond Carrion fight last. I lived through all of his things fighting, and then I swung back, and then I double flat. I basically killed all the infantry there. And by the end of that Diamond Carrion, there was one Lightning Claw. I don't know if it was a Terminator. It was a dude with a shield and all that, but you know, it's a wolf guy unit. And then a commander with a hammer on a wolf back there. Those are the only guys left. And then I had a Diamond Carrion who'd killed an infiltrator squad and now was just standing in the middle of his deployment zone. So when the Redemptors got a chance to shoot, I had damaged one of them a little bit with my Hive Guard, and he healed it back up because he had Father of the Forge, so he healed it just flat 3, and it was its half profile. And then these two and a group of multi-milta attack bikes came out and just obliterated the Diamond Carrion. So the one in the middle was just destroyed. The other one on the left was still alive, but wasn't alive for much longer. But by the end of the game, I had wiped out pretty much everything except for the 2 Redemptors. Once I saw that it was healing more than I could realistically chunk down, because I couldn't just kill it in one turn with the resources I had left, I left it alone. So that was the first interaction I had with Redemptors. And the very last turn, the thing that ended up mattering is one Redemptor had walked down to my deployment zone and gotten onto an objective, and I charged it with Hive Guard through a building and just surrounded it. So it has like a certain number of attacks in close combat. Its damage in close combat is super lethal, but it wasn't able to get through my Hive Guard fast enough, so I just held it there and held the objective with more bodies. So that is the way that it ended, and that felt like satisfying, using Hive Guard in a strange way. So my second game, I went against a Deathwatch player, and this is the game that I'd want to focus on most as far as what I could learn, and I guess the most interesting game of the weekend. As a spoiler, I did lose the game by 1 point. It was 62 points to 61 points, his favor. And the reason for that was, once again, going against the Redemptors. Because I was able to ignore them in the previous game, I just kind of went that same route and started killing all the infantry around it. So as a Deathwatch, he had split his teams into groups of intercessors. He had heavy intercessors, eradicators, and he had bike squads that were outriders, and then an intercessor lieutenant that would walk along with them. So I was shooting a bunch of bikes. He was bringing stuff back with apothecaries, but at one point, a Diamond Carrion, just because of the opportunity arose, went after a Redemptor Dreadnought and really put a wall up on it. Hit it, but only ended up leaving it with 3 wounds. I think they have 13, which is a weird number. Do you guys know? Because usually I'd think it'd be 12.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's 13.
Yeah, the 13.
It's 13, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they were at 13. Dude ends up with 3, and then when he swings back in the fight phase, does 12 wounds to my full wound Diamond Carrion, and he's on his last. He's on his last rung and just swings back, wails on him, and then that Diamond Carrion ended up dying in the next turn, and my previous Diamond Carrion had died to a counter charge from the other Redemptor in the first one, but he only had 6 wounds left, or I think he had 1 wound whenever he was charged by the Redemptor. So I didn't really get to see how much damage it had potential on its last rung. So that is where the game really went wrong, because that was on the second turn, and leading up to that fight between that Diamond Carrion and that Redemptor, I had spent CP on lots of different things that mids are able to do. So I had moved an Exocrine, I'd spent 1 CP to act like it didn't move. I'd double shot the Hive Guard to try to take out some infantry, so his apothecary wasn't as efficient. And I had done the overdrive. It's 1 CP where you can just double move a unit of infantry, and you roll and take mortal wounds, but you can basically hightail some Hormagaunts across the field to land on an objective. So all these little pieces where I was kind of spending CP in random spots left it to where I didn't have the 3 CP left to fight twice. So while I believe on average my Diamond Carrion should have been able to kill that Dreadnought, because whenever I got into combat he had 12 wounds because he'd done his own mortal wound on himself with plasma, I basically didn't give myself a backup plan, and if I had fought twice I could have killed it. And by the end of the game there was a Redemptor on both sides of the field, and this Hammer of Ananvil, so he was kind of slogging down a longboard, and they ended up both back at full health by the end because the Father of the Forge kept healing him back up and recovering from that fight on turn 2. And one Redemptor was able to turn and shoot. I have a 30-man unit of Devil Gaunts, the Devourer Termagants, turn and shoot 25 of those away, and then punch a Dimecarian and one punch a Dimecarian. Like, it's just nuts, the firepower that these things can put out.
Were they both plasma, or was one of them onslaught?
They were both plasma, but they have like an underslung Gatling.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it's even worse when they're double onslaught, because then they have like 30 something shots, you know, and they are core, so they get the rerolls and everything on too.
And then in close combat, he had a Psyker that whenever he casts onto a unit, they basically get like a list of things that help them in close combat. So they overwatch on 5s instead of 6s. They always fight first whenever they're in combat, and they have +1 to hit, I believe, in melee, just from one psychic power. So he'd cast it on that if a Dimecarian got close, and then like the Dimecarian didn't stand a chance. Like, I would run in, if it didn't kill it, like it could have 1 wound left, he'd turn around, punch it, and then he'd just mow down all of my infantry. And it was one of the 4 objective missions. I'm not sure if it was mission 31.
It's 4 objective, it's retrieval.
Yeah, but it was basically everything was out in the open. So I had like a little bit of boxes that wouldn't even hide my 10-man Hormagaunts that were like in my own deployment field. And then the other 2 spaces were like just straight up out in the open. So it was like a shooting gallery for these Redemptors. If I would have taken one of them, I could have controlled one side of the board, but because I didn't take that one out, basically they just covered all the ground. So I could have won that game since it was just a loss by 1 point, 2 points to actually beat him instead of tie. Killing that thing on that turn, I would have been able to hold enough objectives throughout the game. And those are the parts that I mean where like that was a really big learning game. By the third one, the only thing that I've really learned from that game, this is the third one, so second opponent was named Jory, and again he was playing that Deathwatch. Third, I went against Nick playing Death Guard, and I think this is the first tournament that I've played since like LVO of January 2020. So I have no endurance for these tournaments anymore. So by the time I got into the third round, it's like, oh, my back hurts. I've only had like 1 bottle of water, so I'm just dying over here. We're all wearing masks, and the venue was like a little hot to begin with. Like, I just needed to work on my own, like bring snacks, things like that. So by this game, I'm already like, I've already lost a game. This is already so it's a diagonal deployment. And I put one Dimecarian just in a really bad spot. So he had a Contemptor Dreadnought with the weapon that is a 601 profile, and for every 6 it rolls to wound, it does a mortal wound on top of damage, or 602.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the Volkite weapon on the Contemptor Dreadnought. I ran them in my Death Guard list as well, and it's like 16 shots, 602, but they're core, so they get the Tallyman +1 to hit, and reroll 1s from a Demon Prince, stuff like that. So they're actually like really efficient, and they also get exploding 6s if you have the relic. So like 16 shots can turn into 20 hits, which even if you're winning on 5s, like the 6s are mortal wounds, you get like 10 of those through and force a couple saves. Like, it's really good. So continue, Jim.
So he didn't have any of those like efficiencies. He had Tallyman, he didn't have a Demon Prince, he didn't have the relic. He just rolled like 50% 6s on his wounds. So, and even he like looked at me like wide-eyed, like, that is the best I've ever rolled with this thing before. And it took out half of a Dimecarian just first shot of the game. That Dimecarian ended up dying to a wound, like just down to the last wound, because one of the crawling cannon things, the Death Guard tanks that have like they're like super variable shots. It does. I had 6 wounds left basically on this dude. I failed the save, and it is D3 plus 3 damage, and he rolled the 6, so it was just 6 damage and died down to the wound. And then that Dimecarian rolled a 6 to death throw and ripped up the Hive Guard that were standing right next to it. So like my turn 1 just went real bad, and I could have mitigated that just by deploying in a way where a little more fearfully of the Contemptor Dreadnought, knowing that it could swing that hard, but I wasn't expecting for just that many mortal wounds to go through there when it only happened on 6s. And rerolling and increasing your to hit is one thing, but whenever you're proccing on your to wound rolls, it's like, I mean, 6s aren't that common. It was just real common. So that game, there were lots of things that ended up happening along the way. My Devil Gaunts dropped down. They shot their 90 shots, forced 27 saves. He failed 1 of 27 saves, and it did 1 damage to the, was it Night Shroud Terminator? Death Shroud Terminator? Yeah.
Death Shroud Terminators, yeah.
Right, and then an Exocrine shot both of its 6 volley shots at that same unit. Both of those volleys did 1 damage to that same Terminator, and then my Hive Guard all shot at that same unit and did 1 more damage. So all of my artillery from the list shot until it killed 1 Death Shroud Terminator. So at that point I was like, man, like, it's late, my back hurts, like, let's just talk this out. So that's how that game ended up going. So I'd say, I learned most from the second game, definitely about like tempo of my own list, CP use to make sure that it's really going where it needs to be. And then the third game, bring snacks is basically what my strategy would be. And that was my RTT.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me too, was tournament endurance. I didn't realize like how out of shape I had gotten. Like, my back still hurts, and it was just an RTT. Like, it wasn't even an Ironman or a GT or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll just dive into my RTT real fast. Game 1, I played against an Ultramarine player, super cool dude. He had a ton of Eradicators and a ton of Blade Guard veterans with a Blade Guard agent. That game was basically, I deployed as far away from the Eradicators as I could. We had 3 objectives in each of our deployment zones. I was able to spread the sickness, so like I'm basically guaranteed 9 points on that secondary. While we stand, we fight would get me 15 if he doesn't come interact with me. And I forget what the third one was. But anyways, so I set it up to where if we don't interact, I win the game. And I backlined all of my ranged threat elements, so he had to come out and expose his Eradicators and let me get the first shot. So basically that one was just, the scenario was set up in such a way that I dictated the tempo of engagement, and he had to give me assets to be able to get into the game. So I was able to win that one 80 to like 50 something. It was a good game. He was a great opponent and a good dude to just hang out with. But just circumstantially, my list was a natural counter to his, especially in the mission. But the games I want to talk about is I played back-to-back Necrons rounds 2 and 3. So my round 2 opponent, Todd, again, super cool dude. We kind of got into a Gambit scenario. He's playing full melee Necrons with a Nightbringer, and I've got the Foul Blightspawn. So I kind of just shoved this castle forward in such a way that... Oh, and real fast, I also put Death Shrouds in Deep Strike reserves, so he had to keep honest and screen out his entire backfield, or I'm just going to land and jump on one of his backfield objectives and then change where he has to take the army. So keeping him honest, everything in his army is an asset, so having to hold 2 to 3 assets back to keep from taking Death Shrouds in your butt, like that just kind of messed up how he wanted to trade in this game. But where this one really came down, and it was by luck more than skill on my part, is he was a half an inch short on getting his Nightbringer to be able to kill my Foul Blightspawn. So he was able to move up and do a ton of mortal wounds, but he couldn't effectively charge me because of the fight last. So like, I'm going to bleed his CP so he can interrupt on his own charge phase to even be able to fight. Because like, if he charges in, I pushed forward with Death Shrouds, had Blight Lords behind them because I was running While We Stand, and my Blight Lords are my While We Stand targets. So like, I knew they'd be pretty safe. And I created a scenario where he really couldn't push in like he needed to, and I was able to take out because I have just enough psychic power to smite out, charge, and shoot to kill a Nightbringer in one turn. And so basically the trade ended up, if I kill the Nightbringer before he kills the Foul Blightspawn, I'm going to win. And if he kills the Foul Blightspawn before I kill the Nightbringer, we're going to have a really tough game. And I killed the Nightbringer and created a scenario where it was just he couldn't get through. But one of the things I learned in that game, one is Poxwalkers do way more damage than your opponents expect. Like, don't underestimate Poxwalkers. And 2, is make sure you understand your opponent's threats and you keep measuring. Like, I lucked out that I was a half an inch away. I did not measure that or anything. I just got lucky. So just make sure when you're going over your opponent's list, understand what their threats are and what their threat ranges are, so that way you don't just accidentally hand them the game on a silver platter like I almost did. And then game 3 was also against Necrons, and I started this game by putting myself in a hole. I forgot to put a unit on the objective in my own deployment zone, and it was the priority objective, so like it literally cost me 8 points top of turn 1 because I was just going too fast, not paying attention. So like that was one of the things I need to remember, is just slow down and pay attention to the board state every single turn. And the other thing basically from that game was basically like, don't let dice tilt you. So like I was trying to not get tilted. I made a stupid mistake, it cost me 8 points. Then I was like just chewing through scarabs, chewing through wraiths, killing all this stuff, but then all of a sudden, like, I just stopped killing scarabs. Like, he had 4 scarabs last through 3 assault phases against Death Guard to hold an objective, to let him get hold more, and to let him get hold more on primary, and the hold more than 50% secondary. So like, if I was able to interrupt that for 1 turn, I lost by 13. If I don't make that one mistake and like just play a cleaner game, then I'm down by 5 instead. And then if I interrupt him getting hold more and that secondary once, then that's 8 more points he doesn't score. So like 2 small changes take that from a loss to a win. But again, because I was like out of tournament shape, going too fast, not paying attention to the board state, instead of winning by about 3, I lost by 13. So that's a 16-point swing, not taking into account any of the weird dice interactions or anything else, but just like understanding what I need to do to win that game. I very easily could have won that game. And like, huge props to my opponent. He played it perfectly. He capitalized on every single one of my mistakes. He did what he needed to do to make sure he didn't give the game back. But it was a situation where the advantage was to me, and if I do what I should have done, like, I should have been able to close out and win that game. And it would have been a very close game either way. But that's kind of the thing to remember, is anytime you're at a tournament, or playing any game really, just slow down and understand the tempo and the engagement of the game, so you don't just miss out on free points or give your opponent free points. So it was a good lesson to be reminded of.
Have you ever interacted with that Necron player before? I'm not sure that I've ever seen him at a tournament, but he seemed very like put together.
Yeah, I personally haven't. I know Dan Monsalve has, and like, I believe beat him by exactly 1 point. Like, he was a very very disciplined player. He knew every little thing that his army was supposed to do, and he was very good at playing the mission.
Yeah, like, I came in halfway or so through the game, but it looked like he was always very thoroughly like analyzing. Definitely seemed like a great opponent.
Yeah, and it was a very good game. I was worn out, so I was probably not the best opponent that game. Which is another thing I need to make sure I'm staying on top of, is even if I'm tired, even if I'm frustrated, to make sure I'm still keeping a positive tempo. And that was another thing. He was even good. Like, I was rolling my Volkites out, and I was rolling hot, and instead of being like, man, what the heck, he was like, dude, that was an awesome roll. Like, that's freaking cool. Like he was a good person to play against, good morale, all around, like, just, it was a very positive experience for me to lose a game. Like, that's the way I like to lose a game, is understand what I could have done to win against a good opponent who's not rubbing it in. Like, I even, like, turn 2, I had Death Shrouds in reserves. I forgot to deep strike them, and I was like, oh crap, like, I think I had just cast Miasma of Pestilence. So I cast my first psychic power. And I was like, dude, do you mind if I put these Death Shrouds on this objective? That was my intent. Like, if I don't do this, the game's just over. And he was like, yeah, man, like, that's fine, go for it. So, like, that was another thing I just appreciated. He was a very good opponent. We had a good social contract going. I was, again, being a little bit salty, and he, instead of responding that way, he kind of helped me like calm down, take that deep breath, refocus, and have a good game. So I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, do you guys want to? I know it was mentioned a couple times this episode, and Dan, I think you wanted to revisit it. I'm always down to revisit it. Although I haven't read much about him. Did you want to talk a little bit about Deathwatch before we kind of close out?
I would like to. I don't necessarily think we have the time to go as deep as I was hoping. But I can give one or two quick hitters, and I know Jimmy had one or two things he wanted to touch on with the Deathwatch as well. Jim, did you want to go first, or should I go?
Yeah, so I'll touch on it just because it ties into what we were talking about with the RTT, but just what the Deathwatch player had in that second game and seeing how really powerful Redemptor Dreadnoughts are, I think that's definitely something to look into that I don't think, at least Dan and I don't think that's something we've talked about. I know I've heard that Redemptors were becoming a popular thing to bring, but again, that was the first time that I had faced one. And the way that they are useful both in ranged and in close combat is absolutely crazy. Because you could put them wherever you need them. The only thing is they're slow. They have an 8 movement, so they have to get there. And in the meantime, they can slow through a swarm of OBSEC units. They can just punch down something, like a vehicle, or like they could even try to go toe-to-toe with a knight with the damage output they have. Like they're just really strong. So there are a lot of parts that you need to kind of manicure in the list to be able to fit them in there, because it doesn't feel like there's something just to plug into another list that you have. You're kind of creating a Redemptor list, because you have to put a lot of resources into Tech Marine, who has Father of the Forge and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, you may also still want your Apothecary bringing back units nearby. So there's somewhere in there that you may lose efficiency, but I think it's something that's worth looking into, just because those Redemptors were so strong. I'd love to have them in there.
Yeah, I think kind of the big thing is for Deathwatch, you really you have a lot of situationally useful stratagems, and it's good to have your CP open, and you don't want to overspend points on buffing characters because you're a very elite army. So the discussion kind of comes down to, you need the Tech Marine, you need the Librarian. So then do you take a Chaplain or a Captain? Because the reroll ones to hit are very strong, but the Chaplain giving +1 to hit, especially if you're bringing heavy Eradicators or something, are very important. So it's like you were saying, it's you're going to lose efficiency somewhere. It's finding out where it is for that to be. My brain just shut off. Trying to figure out what can function the best with the least amount of buffs, and then embracing the buffs elsewhere. So one of the things that Jimmy and I have realized playing with and against Deathwatch some is you have the potential for durable OBSEC, mobile OBSEC, and good firepower, plus some reserve manipulation and deep strike potential. If you add the anchor of the Redemptors, I think you can drop one of your home field OBSEC durable units, because you just put 2 Redemptors on a center objective and dare your opponent to come at you, because you're going to dump a ton of efficient firepower, and you still have potential to get OBSEC on it with some volume of models to really win that trade anyway. So I don't know. That's, again, that list and the theory of that list is something that's very interesting to me as well, and I'm excited to iron that out. Because when we did our Deathwatch overview, I think we kind of glossed over the how much mobility that army has. Because that in 9th edition, I was talking about with Dark Eldar, is you need to function in multiple phases to be competitive, and most Marines are some mobility and really good combat, or they got some shooting, some combat. It's a little bit of a blend, and I feel they're efficient in movement, shooting, and close combat, and so that is where I think they have a lot of potential to really take it to the next level as a Marine army.
Yeah, and like you say, where it's like dare your opponent to come at you. The first thing that I saw when I couldn't kill one of these things in the shooting phase was like, well, I need to tag it then. Like I need to basically run in there and try to stop it from shooting and reduce its efficiency. Because of that power fist, it just plows through whatever tries to touch it. Like it's so hard to play around, and it's kind of the same thing as like one ends up being none. So I really like the balance of two. So like I wouldn't just want to stick one Redemptor into a list, but like two Redemptors, that is just tough.
2 has always felt good. In the early ninth edition, when they kind of dropped the core rules on us and they dropped the one mission on it, I think it was like it was whatever the one is with the strategic scan as a secondary. They basically dropped that on us and they dropped the core rules and they were like, "Hey, you guys go have fun." And Ben Cromer, one of the local guys down here, him and I were getting a ton of games into each other, and I was just playing with mostly just like salamanders and like ultramarines and that kind of stuff. And I was running 1 to 2 Redemptors. Because talking to some other people, they were saying, "Hey, you know, really try out Dreadnoughts in 9th edition because they're basically active in 3 phases. Because they can shoot in combat, and they're good at melee, and they're just it was such a night and day change from what we were used to with vehicles moving around, taking the -1 to hit penalty, not being able to shoot in combat, that all of a sudden having this vehicle that can walk around, fire at full ballistic skill, fire in close combat, then punch in close combat, and Dreadnoughts felt really good. And I don't think people were really kind of talking about that as much, but now we've kind of seen this emergent strategy that's kind of come out where we're starting to see Redemptors show up in lists. We're starting to see a lot of Custodes lists leverage their Dreadnoughts, which are great stat lines, but then also leverage all the things that I just mentioned that makes Dreadnoughts really good. And I hadn't considered running them in Deathwatch because most Deathwatch lists I've seen, although far from solved, seemed like they were kind of leaning more towards making customized squads and running lots of infantry. But yeah, that's pretty clever how that guy took advantage of the fact that they're core and was leveraging all the the spells and the strats and that kind of stuff with Redemptor Dreadnoughts. So that's pretty exciting to see it get play.
Yeah, plus Redemptors, in my opinion, are the coolest looking Dreadnoughts.
They look super cool. I like Invictors a lot too, but although I like Invictors much more in Ultramarines than anywhere else. But yeah, I agree. Both those models are super cool looking.
Yeah. Alright, was there any other topic that we had to follow up?
I think the last thing was just like Sisters predictions. They've been previewing a lot of Sisters stuff. Dan, I know you're pretty excited about it. You said you have I think you have like an unbuilt army in your closet you were mentioning with Jim Vessel on the Best Overall show. Any of the previews or anything's got you excited?
Yeah, so the two things. One, I really like the idea of the Nundums, just because I want to play Nundums because it's fun to say. And the other is the Storm Shield chicks. Like, Sisters aren't durable, and I don't think they're going to be durable, like, even if you have a Storm Shield. But if they're durable enough, and what I say a lot is, like, a unit you don't kill by accident. Like, the Storm Shield Sisters, I feel like, are going to take just enough attention that you don't kill them by accident. And creating that in an MSU style army feels really good. Like, I'm already, like, I've been intimidated by Sisters because they have, like we've talked about, good ability for, like, asset trading, good range, good melee. Like, they function, again, in multiple phases. They're a very solid army, and adding that little bit of durability might be enough to push them over the edge. Like, assuming nothing else changes and they just get a few new units, like, that could be what keeps them at the top. I already feel like they're an S tier army, and getting a couple more toolkit pieces to survive where you need to survive, maybe sit on an objective a little longer than your opponent thought, that type of unit can really upgrade the playstyle of an already aggressive and efficient army. So again, I'm really excited. I'm not building them yet because assuming it's a codex, not just new models, I don't want to like, oh, let's do all multi-melta Retributors, and then suddenly like their plasma is better for some reason or something like that. I don't know, but I'm holding off, as excited as I am, until we get the new releases. But like as soon as that happens, I'm going full like all in. It's an army I've thought about and wanted to play for probably 2 years, and it's time to just jump in and do it. So I'm just excited in general to be able to get into this army, and the new releases are just like that nice icing on the cake.
Yeah, it's a lot of cool, exciting stuff. The thing that has me most excited about it is looking at a lot of these new units, like the Dogmata, which is, it looks like it's going to be a chaplain type unit, which is fitting for the lore. But then all these other types of units is, it's not so much any one particular thing where I'm like, oh, it's a cool model, cool rules, it'll do this. It's more the fact that, and based off what I've seen off the 9th edition books, is that GW is getting more brave with exploring new design space, because you can only rehash so many times, like, hey, this unit moves X inches, hits on, an X probability, has X weapon with X shots and X strength, and that's it, They are really kind of exploring the design space of, hey, you can take this HQ, if you have this HQ, it drops these guys into slots or interacts with this unit this way. Command points are tight if you take multiple detachments, but you can, instead of spending command points, you can spend points to upgrade a unit to an extra version of like troops or extra version HQ. And it's seeing these new units that don't really fit like an archetype, kind of, I'm trying to read the tea leaves a little bit here, but it shows me that they are going to continue that trend with Sisters, who are already kind of like, in my opinion, kind of a wacky army, and they're going to explore that design space even more. I agree with you 100% about the chicks with the halberds and stuff like that, and then the Nundums, because one of the things Sisters lack is a relatively durable force that can exist on objectives. When I play with Sisters, usually just to make sure I don't get blasted off my my home field objectives, I usually try to put a mix of different defensive profiles, some sort of OBSEC, and like a character on there, and then preferably out of sight if I can. So usually on any one of my home field objectives, I'll have a vehicle. That vehicle may be a transport with stuff inside. I'll have some OBSEC, and then I'll have a character behind it. And I'll try to do that on 2 objectives. And that's just so I can hopefully, without things going completely sideways, there's an onion on 2 of my objectives that you have to peel apart if you want to try to get me to have less than 10 points on primary. And then that gives me a solid base where I can then launch stuff forward like Repentia or Troops or Zephyrum and try to take you off your objectives. But that takes up a lot of units. My average Sisters list has about 15 to 20 units in it, which sounds like a lot, but if you're trying to put like 3 or 4 of them on each objective, times 2 on a hold 1-2 more mission, that's 8 units that you're using, before casualties. If it's a hold 2-3 more mission, it gets even harder, especially because those missions, the objectives are a little bit further apart. So being able to have maybe, some Storm Shield girls in a Rhino, or have some Nundums kind of peeking on an objective and out of line of sight to 80% of my opponent's army, and the remaining 20% is the stuff they're shooting their heavy weapons at, it opens up new gameplay. Also, the Castigator, I'm very excited about that unit specifically, because right now, one of the things I feel like Sisters kind of struggle with is they have very good answers for dealing with big problems, with Repentia and Retributor, stuff like that. Even though they play very MSU, they often have a hard time dealing with just small problems, because they usually require you to explosively commit something. That's why a lot of times I would run Mortifiers or Exorcists or something like that, just so I could take this, the Exorcist missile launchers and the heavy bolters, or heavy bolter emulators, or Mortifiers, who I actually use more as a shooting unit than a melee unit, and I can kind of have that broad spectrum shooting to punch out like light vehicles or mop up a wounded intercessor squad or something like that, without having to commit an entire Repentia unit, or having to commit an entire Retchbeard unit. And so that way I could save that, for those big multi-charges or really breaking my opponent's back or something like that. Because the rest of the sister stuff, a lot of it is just Bloody Rose, AP 1 damage 1 attacks, or AP 0 damage 1 bolter shots. And especially when we're coming out of this kind of like Terminator equivalent meta, it just didn't really get it done. So it was kind of like, there's just this dynamic where you're holding objectives, and your opponent would basically try to bait out your big units before you could really trade up with them. So to get back on topic, I really do like how these new units are previewing. They're kind of giving us more of these like autocannons and heavy bolter platforms and durable infantry, and just things that I've kind of felt that there have been low-key gaps in the Sisters toolkit, and they're kind of giving us ways to fill them.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what's exciting, is as they just kind of fill out this model range a little bit more and close those gaps. I don't necessarily I don't want them to be like top tier super cheese all the time, but having options for every scenario. You might not be able to take all comers list, but you can really tech into what the meta dictates, and if you have those options, it makes the army feel really good. And I think that's where we're going to end up with at the end of the day with Sisters. So I'm excited for them for sure.
Yeah, it's for me, their look kind of grabs me, but also the thing I think I honestly like most about them is they kind of fill this kind of halfway point, not between like Space Marines and Custodes and versus Imperial Guard. Like Imperial Guard is just way too many models, way too much kind of like horde action for me to deal with. But I also want to be able to get into this kind of trade economy with my opponent, and that's the playstyle I like. And with the elite army, it's a little bit harder to do that. You want your elite army, you really want your elite units to be durable and exist, and be able to, engage their opponent multiple times before they get wiped out. Blade Guard, you want them to project threat, or you want them to kill like 2 units before they die, or something like that. Same with Death Guard Terminators. You want them to be like the wall that your opponent breaks against. With Sisters, it's not like that. It's literally kind of like, okay, well, you just kind of position, you jockey for position, project a little bit of threat, and as soon as you get a chance, clear a small hole with Seraphim or some heavy bolters or something, and in go the Repentia, in go the Zephyrim, in go the Retchbeers, and then afterwards, they die, and your opponent may be happy about that. Like, oh, cool, I took Repentia off the table. And it's like, well, that's great, but 5 Repentia are 80 points, and they can easily take out, something much, much, much tougher, or 144 points of Repentia is 9 girls, and that can take out a marquee unit from the opponent, if it's the right profile. So having that kind of middle zone army and then seeing it fleshed out is kind of nice, especially as Marines get kind of more to the Primaris profile, or the 3 wound kind of profile, where they're kind of getting more heavy infantry. I think I kind of view Sisters almost as moving into that gap that was left, where it's almost like they're getting all the firstborn stuff, the small Marine stuff, and they're going to kind of fit that profile, just being T3 and Strength 3 instead.
Sorry, I was still muted there. Yeah, that's a good point. Where they feel like they're stepping into the firstborn. I like that a lot. And they're doing it in the right way too, where it doesn't just feel like another Marine army. They feel very unique, but they scratch that itch for the people that want to have that feel and that play style. Yeah, so Jimmy, did you have any thoughts on Sisters before I think we're about ready to wrap up otherwise?
I really do like their new model lines as well, but I haven't fought Sisters since the Iron Man that we went to in Georgia, and that was prior to, it was 8th edition, and it was way long ago, so I don't have too much insight on how all their stuff works.
Well, hopefully we'll be playing some of those games soon then.
Yeah.
Just sitting on the shelf. You're going to be building some of those models.
They'll look better, that's for sure.
Oh.
Hey!
All right, cool. Well, that's all I had. If Did you have anything else, Tim?
No, that was it. Just wanted to just have a morning bullshit session, talk some 40k, kind of with no real plans.
Absolutely perfect. And so for everyone else, we will be getting Siegler again. He and Lennon have been very busy with the Trap House RTT they're doing, as well as their coaching and everything else. 40k is really starting to pick up as that vaccine is coming out and more people are able to go to events. So we're working on their schedule a little bit, but we are going to record Necrons with Siegler. Hopefully we are able to do a deep dive. I've gotten to play against Necrons now a ton, so like I'm really excited to do this breakdown because they have such a deliberate way of playing, but they have just enough finesse. Like, it is such a good army, and for being like one of the first Codex releases of 9th edition, I feel like Games Workshop got that book right, and it's hard to say that about some of what Games Workshop does. So I'm really excited for that conversation, so definitely be looking out for that.
Yeah.
So cool. All right then. Remember, everyone, we do have a Patreon to kind of help keep things going. So if y'all want to check that out, Tim's probably got better information than I do because I just run with things. So Tim, you want to take over and talk about that and where they can find us, subscribe, and everything else?
Yeah, sure. Our Patreon, Florida Man 40k, it usually posts a link in every single podcast episode and YouTube episode. And real transparent about it, we basically just use it just to cover the cost of the video editing, hosting the podcast, the various other tools that we use to produce this content for you. We only have one tier, and it's $5. We have pins on the way. I've actually been informed that they have shipped. After 2 months of membership, we'll send out a Florida Man podcast pin to you, and then the rest of the money goes right back into the show. And just that also gives you shout outs, and we don't have any of this episode, but it also gives you the option to ask any of the hosts or any of the guests any questions, as well as also giving you access to the show uncut as soon as it's recorded, and that usually gets you access to it about a week before everyone else. But that's it.
All right, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you as soon as we got Siegler on, whether that's tomorrow or in a couple days.
Yeah, Necrons. We'll see you then.
All right, bye guys.